Okay, so talked about employees and firing an employee. I heard this quote. I say I heard. I might have read. It was a premise, and the premise started. The customer's always right. So, but that was the intro to it. Was this assumption that you hear that the customer's always right? As to all of you who would own a business out there, and everybody who's watching, I'm telling you that is 100% not true. I don't know anybody who actually believes that. There might be companies out there who use it with baser level employees, entry level employees, where you can just assume you treat them like they're always right, that sort of thing. But I want to go the other end of it. Is the customer always right? No, that's absurd. And I don't think any of you really believe the customer is always right. You probably know, or maybe even have been the customer who thinks you're always right, but reality is that's not the case. How far does that go, though? And some of my employees have been surprised to hear, not my employees so much as many of the businesses that I consult with. One of the things I regularly realize is businesses lose a huge amount of time putting up with customers that are terrible. And I've found one of these universal truths I found with the businesses that I work with. If they don't know this already, they need somebody to tell them, you can fire a customer. You're allowed to fire customers. And that, it seems like such a simple thing, but very often business owners seem to almost need to be given permission to do that. And what do I mean by that? And whether you're an employee or every one of you is a customer, you're a customer of all sorts of businesses, understand that how we look at a customer, you absolutely can be a customer whose business is not worth it. When I was running Rudder Bows, the archery manufacturer, I fired one of our biggest customers. And the reason I fired the customer was because he had decided he was so big that he could eat up all of our time. And he really had pretty much decided I couldn't get rid of him. Our company depended upon him. And so he could be as much of a jerk as he wanted to be. And there wasn't anything I could do about it. As long as he paid his bill, there was nothing I could do about it. And it came as a real shock to him when I told him that wasn't the case. So Rudder Bows, we made wooden archery equipment. No, usually there's a bow sitting here, but there's not. I'm not sure where it is at this second. But we made wooden archery equipment, handmade stuff. But most of our stuff was entry-level stuff. What I mean by that is I would say most of our bows ran in the $125 to $250 range. So as bows go, very inexpensive. Compound bows can be wildly more expensive than that. Even handmade wooden bows can be wildly more expensive than that. But our whole idea was bringing a handmade product to people at a price that most people could afford. But, as I've talked about in other business things, the way you did that is you do that with speed. We do that by having a set level of quality that is worth what our customer contract, you'll have heard me say it before, customer contract is what does the customer expect for the amount of money that they're paying. We met our customer contract and our stuff became wildly popular. We were doing great. Company growing like crazy. But this guy had been around the company, but a customer earlier on in the company, and what he had really wanted, what he was insisting on, was $600 bows for $100 a piece. That's what he was. He was as picky as you would be if you were spending $600 or $800 or $1,000. He would nitpick everything. Nitpick finishes, nitpick sanding, just nitpick. That's all he did. And I would say the guy, when I first joined the company, when I first started running the company for them, the guy who we had answering the phone probably took a phone call from this guy every single day. So this guy was buying 30, 40 bows at a time, something like that, which was reasonably, at that time, that was a big customer to them. And so they were getting shipped off to him constantly. But this guy was just constantly a problem with it. And he was insistent on it. And he wasn't nice about it. He was abusive to my employees when talking to, and it really, and what it came down to is I started looking at the amount of time we spent trying to make him happy. And because at one time the company had relied too much on him. They'd gotten in a habit of really bad behaviors, like replacing stuff for him and all of that. So he was really only paying half the price for everything because he was getting twice as much. And oh, by the way, most of that stuff wasn't coming back. So he was really, I think he was a good enough guy. I don't think he was meaning he was scamming the company, but what it worked out as is he was scamming the company. He was getting twice as much, and sure as heck, I'm sure he was selling all the stuff that he got too, and he would discount it down, and it was just junk. It was just garbage. He was being a jerk in the whole thing, and it built up and it built up and it built up over 3-4 months of me dealing with this as I took over the company, the whole thing. And finally one day I talking to him on the phone. We weren't even in the same country. I just told him, listen, you can't buy from us anymore. He's like, what do you mean? I said, listen, you need to understand I am firing you as a customer. This is your last order. You will not receive any more bows from us. Well, you can't do that. Oh yes, I can. I could do that if you were across the street. You're across the planet. I'm not selling you anything anymore. Well, I'm like, listen, this is the last thing I'm going to tell you. You are not worth the money you bring in. You're impossible. You are impossible to work with. You are demanding things that no one else does. You are demanding things you're not paying for. And I would rather sell you nothing than make the amount of money we're making off of you, so I'm choosing nothing. You don't actually like what we sell. You are demanding us make you something we actually don't sell, and you demand that I sell it to you at the price of the stuff we do sell. We're not doing it anymore. You're done. And I hung up on him. And there was a little bit of blowback. That at that time I was the general manager. The owner of the company had a cow immediately, but that's because he didn't understand at first. He came around on it, but didn't understand at first. And that guy, because the archery world's not that big, he went out and blew us up online a bunch of places, which was funny because he went out into the blogosphere. It was chat rooms at that time. He'd go into the chat rooms and he'd blow us up. And the funny thing was he'd been such a jerk to so many people, I never had to defend us. Because somebody else would jump up and go, oh my gosh, I should have fired you a long time ago too. I'm going to fire you too. I can't imagine anybody still sells you stuff. I fired you a long time ago. We didn't even have to do it because he had a reputation worldwide of being such a jerk that, and as a matter of fact, if anything, he prompted more talk about what we were doing, so it was actually good. That's another adage that basically all publicity is good publicity. But no, as a business owner, you can decide who you do business with within bounds. No, you can't say I'm not doing business with black people. That's not legitimate. You gotta understand the difference. And I'm assuming if you're in this audience, you're smart enough to know the difference between those things. But as an individual, no individual is so important that their business is. You shouldn't let them become the demanding thing that makes it not worth doing. I literally know of business owners. I have worked with business owners who were on the verge of quitting business over a customer or a few customers, who were ruining their life, it wasn't any fun. It wasn't meeting their needs. They might have been making money, but I'm telling you, if you can make something miserable enough that a person will go, there's just not enough money on the planet to be worth doing this, and they walk away from business over things like that. As a business owner, know that you can fire a customer. As a customer, understand there are limits to how much of an a-hole you can be and expect to be put up with by a business. And it's just like an employee. The more of a pain in the butt you are, the more money you better be spending to make it worth it. Because that's it. It's like paying, it's an annoyance tax that the more annoying you are, the more money you better be worth, or I'm not going to put up with it. I'm not. And I give permission. And I've had lots of business owners that I work with hear that and immediately go fire a list of, and they all can tell you who it is too. You know, most business owners, I can say, who are your 5 worst customers? And it's amazing how many of those 5 worst customers they spend a lot of money. That's why they're still there. They're customers, you see them too much. You see It's that sort of thing. And you go, no, but they've just, so many of them have just never gotten to the point or never understood the point where I just go, no, get out, don't come back. And I don't have to. So that's a piece of it with me. As a matter of fact, it's, why do you become a business owner? Most people would tend to think it's because of money. I don't find it's nearly as much about money as it is about control. It's about having the life that you want to live. It's not being in that situation where an employee's driving you crazy and you can't do anything about it because you're also an employee. It's about those sorts of things. And a piece of it for me is I have some control over who I interact with in my life, who I have to spend time with, and customers are on that list. Yes, I need lots of customers. I want lots of customers, Mike, but not all customers are created equal. Oh, by the way, I found that a customer that's a bad enough customer that you would fire them, it wasn't just that the guy in the bow side. I'm finding it's a pretty universal thing. If you're having a giant problem with them, you're not alone, which means they're not very powerful. I have lost completely any fear of them going out and telling the world, oh my gosh, do you know what happened to me? Because what I find is usually their world listens to them really, really good, but nobody reacts on the basis of it. And it's amazing how often people will walk into my company to buy things from me and say, oh, I heard you fired so-and-so, but I kind of understand. I don't know that, I honestly don't believe I have ever lost a customer because I fired this one and that one talked another one into not doing business with me. It may have happened, but I don't know of a single case of that happening, because even the people that they're closest to tend to know who they are and what they are. And so, yeah, it doesn't turn into anything. I'll give one other example. One of my employees right now, they live in an apartment. And the person who lives below them, I believe it is, above or below, but I think it's the person who lives below them, is a monumental pain in the rear. Does things like constantly links into their Bluetooth speakers in their surround sound system and plays crap through their surround sound system, bangs on the walls, and calls management stuff on them all the time. If they walk through their house, they're college age, they walk through their house at 2 o'clock in the morning, he'll call management and say they were banging on their floors or whatever. It's just constant. And so I've been advising them, and first I said, go talk to the managers, because there was these complaints to the point where they were being threatened with eviction and stuff, which is funny because that had to just be generated automatically, because they went to talk to the manager of the facility, and they sat down, and the manager of the facility did something I wouldn't want my employee to do. He opened his mouth too far and said, oh yeah, well, we know that guy's a big problem. Why am I under threat if you know you can't believe anything that guy says? Oh, every person who lives next to him has this problem? Why did you rent me an apartment next door to somebody who's going to harass me? There will be more to play out on that. But the interesting thing is they get talking to the police, because I said the other thing you want to do is go tell the police, because you need to, every time this guy harasses you, you need to call the police. You need to cooperate with the police. So things like, do not call the emergency number. A guy taking over your Bluetooth speaker is not an emergency. It isn't. It's annoying. It's not an emergency. But I said, you need to call every single time. Well, do you think the police knew who they were talking about when he called them? Damn right they did. The police, because if you're a giant pain in the ass, pretty soon the whole community knows. And if you're doing stuff like that person's doing, they have no credibility. The police might show up at your house because they got a complaint and they have to go and they have to check the box that said we went and talked to them. But nobody cares. No one cares. So when you fire somebody who's like that, fire them as a customer, everybody gets it.